Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with your permission, I will make a statement about the UK's future relationship with the European Union. Can I start by paying tribute to my right honourable friend, the member for Halton Price and Howden, and his Herculean efforts, along with my honourable friend, the member for Wickham, and the wider DEXU team, to get us to this point in both the negotiations, but also with the successful passage of the EU withdrawal bill through Parliament. It is a striking achievement. My right honourable friend is a loss to government, but I suspect, with the mildest apprehension, a considerable gain to this House. Mr. Speaker, as we leave the EU, free movement of people will come to an end. We will control the number of people who come to our country. We will assert stronger security checks at the border.
Order. The Secretary of State is trying to complete his statement in circumstances in which there is manifest discontent in the chamber. Let me say to the right honourable gentleman, whom I welcome to his new responsibilities and whom I congratulate on his promotion to the Cabinet, that I recognise that collective decisions are made upon these matters and they're not all his individual doing. It is a source of considerable unhappiness in this chamber, as is manifest and has been over the last hour or so on both sides of the House, that the right honourable gentleman is delivering a statement about a white paper, copies of which are not currently available to members of the House of Commons. Well, I very order. Can I say to the Secretary of State? I think we should suspend. Order. I say to the Secretary of State that it would be very unseemly, discourteous to him and to the members of the House, for his statement to be delivered while copies are being distributed. I will therefore suspend the sitting of the House for 5 minutes. It is most regrettable that this situation has arisen, but I am dealing in a way that I think is constructive with what has arisen.
I'm confident that a deal is within reach, given the success of the Prime Minister and her negotiating team so far. And most issues under the withdrawal agreement have by now been resolved.
As for the new Secretary of State, I'm sure the House would like to know when he was first shown the contents of the white paper. He wasn't at Chequers. So when did Ollie Robbins tell him that this was the policy he now had to sell? It's an important question, because 2 white papers, it appears, are being published today. The one now before the House, and the alternative one apparently drafted by his own department. That's now available, Mr. Speaker, in instalments on Conservative Home. In fact, it beat this white paper to publication.
The phrase here at the end of it is arrangements that the UK might want to offer to other close trading partners in the future. My simple question is, when the government goes to discuss, negotiate or confer with the EU, whichever phrase suits, does he believe that they would be prepared to withdraw the rights to benefits for those who come without jobs?
Well, I thank my right honourable friend. Let me give him some assurance. Free movement will end. It is not up for negotiation. Equally, as countries right around the world do when they engage in free trade negotiations, the issue of visas is often considered alongside it, and that's the approach that we will take.
I am deeply worried indeed about the proposals that I've read already in this white paper and in the 3-page document that we received the other day, and for this reason. On the issue of sovereignty of Parliament, we passed the Withdrawal Act, which repeals the 1972 Act. Under these proposals, as I read them, and the so-called parliamentary lock, in compliance with a common rule book, which would deal with regulatory rule-taking from the EU and discussions that would take place around that, page 91 of this document tells us that it will be scrutinised in accordance with the normal legislative procedure and that Parliament could decide not to enact them. Now, I understand what they're getting at, but, if I may say, Mr. Speaker, as Chairman of the European Scrutiny Committee, and having been on that committee for 33 years, despite what was promised in the White Paper in 1971, before the 72 Act, I can assure the House that never, in my experience, has there ever been an occasion when the House has overturned a European regulation, which puts me on serious caution. Therefore, I have to ask, how would this system work in practice? Would it be whit-ridden, and would it be burglar-proof from the so-called parliamentary lock?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, and I pay tribute to his huge experience in this area. In relation to the parliamentary scrutiny and the ability for the UK to control any changes in the common rule book for goods, let's be clear, as I said before, we would expect to have a proper dialogue in relation to any changes that were made on both sides, and there would be a parliamentary lock to make sure that in translating them into legislation in this country, that there was proper democratic oversight. Of course, if this House and this Parliament decided not to, it would have consequences for the agreement, and that would feed back into the review mechanisms and the dispute resolution mechanism that we've carefully tailored. That's the balanced approach we sought to make sure that we have consistent interpretation of the rules that we're going to apply in that area, whilst retaining democratic oversight in this House.
Could I just ask him to confirm that Angela Merkel didn't have a copy before we had a copy in Parliament? And could I just ask him to state very categorically, Mr. Speaker, that after we leave the European Union, no person living in the Commonwealth countries will be treated any differently than anyone living in the former EU that we were part of, in terms of their relationship to this country in way of being able to come or not come. Equal rights for everyone living in the world, rather than giving any special rights to those living in the EU.
Well, thank the Honourable Lady, and I pay tribute to her long-standing interest in this and pugnacious campaigning during the referendum. Of course, we're ending free movement, and that allows us to avoid what is effectively a discriminatory approach between those coming from the EU and those coming from outside of the EU. The Home Secretary will be bringing forward legislation which will deal with some of the details of that, and of course it will make up part of the negotiation process with our EU partners.
My constituents are realistic, sensible and practical lot, and they know, unlike some politicians, that they won't always get 100% of what they want in life, but they do expect their politicians to deliver. And before the referendum, the 58% of my constituents who voted Brexit told me very clearly that what they wanted was control of their borders, control of their laws, an end to freedom of movement, and to stop spending millions of pounds in Europe for reasons that, or billions of pounds that they couldn't really understand. In very simple terms, Secretary of State, will this deal deliver on what my constituents want?
Yes, it will. And of course, we need to proceed at pace with our negotiations with our EU friends to make that happen. At the same time, of course, as he will know, we need to make sure that we're ready for any eventuality from the negotiations. But we're not looking for, to rely on those contingency plannings. We're looking to get the very best deal in this white paper. We've achieved it.
Thank you.